we walk the ancient halls of Kapora Tower, where knowledge, predating the Ultima themselves, waits in silent chambers. We trace the footsteps of legendary mages whose names echo through the ages, from Vanus Galerian, who brought magic to the masses, to Manimarco, who descended into forbidden darkness. We uncover the philosophy of the old ways, explore the disappearances of an entire island, and witness the moments when these mysterious sages emerged from seclusion to alter the course of Tamriel's destiny. The Psijic Order is not simply another guild of mages. They are something far older, far stranger, and infinitely more powerful than that simple description could ever convey. Let us begin at the beginning, in an age when the world was still young, and the elves first walked the shores of Somerset. Chapter 1. The Founding, Rebellion against a Changing Faith. In the depths of the Merethic era, when the Ultima first settled permanently upon the Somerset Isles, leaving behind their mythical homeland of Aldmeris, their society underwent a profound transformation. For generations beyond counting, the Ultima had practiced a form of worship that honored all ancestors equally. Every spirit that had passed into the beyond deserved reverence. Every soul that had walked before was worthy of remembrance. This was the foundation of their spiritual life, an egalitarian approach to honoring the dead that bound communities together in shared respect for those who came before. But as the centuries passed and Aldmeri civilization became more stratified, more hierarchical, a disturbing change began to take root. The aristocracy, seeking to elevate their own lineages above the common folk, began promoting a new religious paradigm. They argued that not all ancestors were equal, that some spirits had been so exceptional in life that they deserved to be elevated above mere ancestor status. Slowly, insidiously, certain ancestor spirits began to be worshipped, not as revered forebears, but as gods. Auriel, the soul of Akatosh; Trinimac, the champion warrior; Sirabane, the warlock's god; Finasta, who taught the Ultima to live longer. These exceptional spirits were transformed in the cultural consciousness from ancestors into deities, beings worthy of temples and grand rituals rather than simple communal remembrance. The shift was subtle at first, but its implications were devastating to those who understood what was truly being lost. A group of Ultima elders watched this transformation with growing horror. They understood that what was happening was not simply a religious evolution, but a corruption of the fundamental truths that had guided their people since time immemorial. By elevating certain spirits above others, by creating a hierarchy of the divine that mirrored the social stratification of the living, they were betraying the ancient wisdom that had been passed down from Aldmeris itself. These elders called themselves the Psijics, from CG, derived from the ineffable name PSJJJJ, an unpronounceable word that represented the primordial force of change and chaos, the essence of Padome himself. The Psijics refused to accept this new order. They would not bow before gods who were simply ancestors dressed in divine robes. They would not participate in a society that had corrupted the old ways, the elder way, the philosophy of meditation and study that had been taught to the earliest Ultima by beings even more ancient than themselves. And so Using their considerable mystical powers, they departed from Somerset entirely. They settled upon Artaeum, a mysterious island lying southwest of the main Somerset Isle, between the kingdoms of Moridunon and the village of Runtibai. It was the third largest island in the Somerset archipelago, a place of misty hollows and hidden lagoons, of singing waters clear as fresh-blown glass. Flowers whispered secrets when the wind blew, and stones had names too long for mortal tongues to speak. More importantly, Artaeum held secrets of its own, structures that predated even the Oldmer's arrival, built by unknown hands in an age lost to memory. Here, in self-imposed exile, the Psijic Order was truly born. Here they would preserve the old ways, while the rest of Somerset descended into what they viewed as corruption and spiritual decay. They did not completely sever ties with their homeland. Occasionally, individual Psijics would return to the mainland to offer counsel to kings and nobles, to share carefully measured wisdom with those they deemed worthy. But never again would they call Somerset home. Artaeum was their sanctuary, their fortress of knowledge, their refuge from a world that had forgotten its most fundamental truths. The Psijic Order had become the keepers of something profoundly important, a living link to wisdom that stretched back beyond recorded history. And for over 3 millennia, they would guard that wisdom with a dedication and secrecy that would make them the most mysterious organization in all of Tamriel. The philosophy: understanding the 11 forces. To understand the Psijic Order is to understand their philosophy, and at the heart of that philosophy lies a concept so fundamental, so all-encompassing, that everything else flows from it: the 11 forces. The 11 forces are, according to Psijic belief, the divine laws that define reality itself. They are not merely magical principles or philosophical concepts, but the actual fundamental forces that hold existence together, the invisible architecture upon which all of creation is built. While the complete list of the 11 forces has never been fully revealed to outsiders, the Order has been explicit about which force stands supreme above all others: change. Change, the Psijics teach, is the most sacred of the 11 forces. It is described as the force without focus or origin, the one constant in a universe of variables. In the words of Taheritai the Sage, recorded in ancient Psijic texts, in Mundus, conflict and disparity are what bring change, and change is the most sacred of the 11 forces. Change is the force without focus or origin. This reverence for change connects directly to the Order's namesake, to the ineffable PSJJJJ, to Padme himself, the primordial spirit of chaos and transformation. But the Psijics do not view all change as inherently beneficial. They distinguish between positive change, which brings growth and evolution, and oegnitha, which translates roughly as bad change or destructive chaos. It is the duty of the disciplined Psijic, the enlightened one, to counterbalance oegnitha wherever it manifests. This might mean working to prevent tyrants from rising to power, sabotaging the plans of those who would bring ruin, or intervening at critical moments when the wrong kind of change threatens to cascade into catastrophe. However, the Psijics draw a firm line at murder and assassination. Such direct violence belongs to the Sithist sects, the Dark Brotherhood, and the Morag Tong. The Psijic Order operates through more subtle means: intelligence gathering, diplomatic pressure, careful manipulation of circumstances, and the strategic application of their considerable magical abilities. Other forces that have been identified include several related to kinetic energy, deflection, absorption, and a mysterious third kinetic force, whose name remains obscured. Balance is another of the 11 forces, as is envelopment and contemplation. Water, or memory, forms the basis of the old ways themselves, suggesting that the Psijics view the past as a living force that shapes the present. Time itself is recognized as one of the 11 forces, which explains the Order's remarkable ability to manipulate temporal flow. Stasis, the philosophical opposite of change, completes the known list, though scholars suspect there may be others that the Order has chosen not to reveal. The practice through which the Psijics seek to understand and manipulate these forces is called the Old Ways, or the Elder Way. This is a philosophy of meditation and study that binds the forces of nature to the individual will. Critically, the Psijics distinguish their practice from conventional magicka. While the effects may appear similar to an outside observer, the old ways differ fundamentally in their origin and mechanism. Where magicka draws upon the remnants of Magnus and the Magna Ge, the divine sparks left behind when they fled from Mundus, the old ways are believed to tap into something more primal, more fundamental: the forces of nature themselves, the earth bones, the crystallized patterns left by the El Nofe, who sacrificed themselves to create the laws of reality. This distinction is not merely academic. Psijic magic, when practiced by true masters, can accomplish feats that conventional mages find impossible or incomprehensible. Members of the Order have been known to manipulate time itself, not just perceiving past events, but actually stepping backward through temporal streams. They can render themselves and entire structures insubstantial, shifting Artaeum itself between planes of existence. Some whisper of a silent, magical communication that allows Psijics to share thoughts across vast distances, a form of telepathy so subtle that even those being communicated with may not realize a calling is taking place. To maintain their spiritual connection to the old ways, faithful Psijics perform 2 critical rites each year: the rites of Moawita, conducted on the 2nd of Hearthfire, work to weaken evil spirits and empower salutary ones. The Vigeld, performed on the 1st of Second Seed, serves a similar purpose. These are not mere rituals or theatrical performances. The Psijics believe that the spiritual world is always watching the mortal realm, that ancestors and exceptional spirits exist in a constant state of observation and influence. The rites are practical measures to maintain the proper balance between the living and the dead, between beneficial spiritual forces and malevolent ones. The Psijic view of the afterlife and divinity itself is remarkably different from mainstream Tamrielic religion. To them, the Aedra and Daedra are not fundamentally different from other spirits. They are simply ancestor spirits who attained exceptional power in the afterlife. Even the divines, worshipped as gods by the empire and its provinces, are seen by the Psijics as nothing more than remarkably powerful former mortals. This belief system, preserved from the earliest Altmeri traditions, is one of the reasons the Order has always maintained such distance from conventional religious and political structures. They do not recognize the authority of gods, only the wisdom of those who have gone before, and the immutable forces that govern all existence. Understanding this, philosophy is essential to understanding why the Psijic Order operates as it does. They are not power-hungry sorcerers seeking to dominate Tamriel. They are not ambitious politicians maneuvering for influence. They are scholars and monks dedicated to comprehending the fundamental nature of reality itself, and everything they do, from their isolation to their occasional interventions, flows from that singular purpose. Chapter 2. The Island That Shouldn't Be, Artaeum and Sapora Tower. If the philosophy of the Psijic Order is enigmatic, then their home is even more so. Artaeum is not simply an island. It is a place that exists in defiance of conventional geography, a location that can vanish from the world entirely, and a sanctuary that even the Daedric princes cannot locate when it chooses to hide. When it does manifest in Nirn, Artaeum appears as a horn-shaped island, its northern half consisting of sprawling grasslands dotted with idyllic orchards and rising hills. The southern portion is dominated by a vast mountain range with ancient ruins built into the mountainside, remnants of civilizations that preceded even the Aldmer. The landscape is breathtaking in its otherworldly beauty. Misty woodlands, where the very air seems to shimmer with latent power. Hidden lagoons containing singing waters so clear they might be made of liquid crystal, and everywhere the silver coral that characterizes the Somerset archipelago, though here it seems to pulse with its own internal luminescence. But it is the sky above Artaeum that truly marks it as something beyond the natural world. Those who have walked the island's shores speak of a sky unlike any other in Tamriel, painted in amber and gold, where celestial orbs hang suspended in an impossible firmament. Yellow-orange lights dance between these orbs, connected by threads of pure radiance that arc across the heavens in geometries that hurt the mind to contemplate. This is not the sky of Nirn, but the sky of the Pocket Realm, where Artaeum truly resides, a plane of existence that scholars believe may lie beyond even Aetherius itself. And dominating the northern tip of this impossible island stands Sapora Tower. The tower is a structure that defies easy description. Its architecture matches nothing else in Somerset, nothing else in Tamriel, nothing in the known catalogue of ruins and structures documented by the Empire's scholars. The base of the tower, the foundation upon which all else is built, was already ancient when the Aldmer first discovered Artaeum. It was not built by elves. The material appears to be some form of coral or similar substance, but impossibly worked, shaped by techniques and tools that have left no other trace in the archaeological record. Some scholars have speculated that the slugmen of Thraz, who inhabited Somerset before the Aldmer's arrival, might have built these foundations, as the construction does bear some superficial resemblance to known Slode architecture. But this is mere speculation, one guess among many concerning a mystery that may never be solved. The Psijic Order, upon settling Artaeum, expanded upon these ancient foundations, building upward and outward while maintaining the unique aesthetic of the original structure. The result is a tower that seems to grow organically from the island itself, a massive edifice that appears as much like a natural formation as an artificial construction. Within Sepura Tower, the Psijics established their headquarters, creating chambers for study, meditation, and the practice of their arcane arts. The interior is said to contain persistent enchantments of such sophistication that they can only be adjusted by control globes, devices that require years of experience and a delicate touch to operate properly. But perhaps the most significant feature of Kapora Tower is what lies beneath it: the Dreaming Cave. The Dreaming Cave is described as the place where all the magicka and other energies of Artaeum pool, like water dripping from a chain, accumulating in this subterranean chamber until the concentration of power becomes almost palpable. But the cave is far more than just a reservoir of magical energy. It houses a portal, a gateway that can be used to travel to any realm of oblivion and possibly beyond. This is no minor dimensional doorway. It is a passage of such potency that it has been used by some of the most powerful beings in Tamrielic history. Sotha Sil, the clockwork god, one of the tribunal of Morrowind, used the Dreaming Cave's portal to venture into oblivion and broker the Cold Harbor Compact with multiple Daedric princes. This agreement, struck in the late First Era, bound certain princes to refrain from manifesting physically on Nirn in their full power, a protection that has shielded Tamriel from direct Daedric invasion for millennia. The fact that Sotha Sil trusted the Psijics enough to use their portal for such a critical mission speaks volumes about the Order's neutrality and discretion. Artaeum's most distinctive feature, however, is not what it contains, but what it can do: disappear entirely from existence. At least twice in recorded history, Artaeum has vanished from Nirn. The first disappearance occurred around 2E 230, at the time when Rittermaster Iacchessis fell victim to the mind control of the sea-slowed Keturah. The island simply ceased to exist in the normal world, taking with it all the Psijics who were present at the time. Volnus Galerian, in his account, Artaeum Lost, describes leaving the island and learning later that it vanished just hours after his departure. Whether the Order sensed the coming threat posed by Manimarco's rising power and chose to retreat, or whether Iacchessis used his last moments of control to protect his people by removing them from Nirn entirely, remains a matter of interpretation. What's certain is that the island remained absent for over 350 years, returning in 2E 582 during the Interregnum. When it returned, some of the original inhabitants were still present, apparently unchanged by the passage of time, though Iacchessis himself bore the scars of Keturah's mental manipulation, even if he didn't consciously remember it. The second disappearance occurred around 4E 100, roughly a century before the events of Skyrim. Once again, Artaeum vanished, taking the Psijic Order with it. The timing corresponds interestingly with the end of the Void Nights, when Massa and Secunda reappeared after 2 years of absence, though whether these events are connected remains pure speculation. For 100 years, the Order was completely absent from Tamriel, with only the rarest of interventions suggesting they still existed somewhere. In 4E201, when the Eye of Magnus threatened to destabilize the world, members of the Order finally appeared at the College of Winterhold, suggesting that even in their hidden state, they maintained some ability to observe and, when absolutely necessary, intervene in Tamrielic affairs. Given the rising threat of the Third Aldmeri Dominion and the Thalmor's hostility toward the Order, this disappearance may have been a strategic retreat from an increasingly dangerous political landscape. The mechanism by which Artaeum vanishes is a closely guarded secret of the Order, but scholars have pieced together some understanding of the process. The Psijics possess the ability to shift the entire island into a pocket realm, a plane of existence separate from Nirn, but accessible through permanent portals located in certain ruins scattered across Somerset, such as the Keep of the 11 Forces near Shimmerine. When Artaeum is in this hidden state, it exists in a place so remote that even the Daedric princes cannot locate it, a sanctuary beyond the reach of gods and mortals alike. Yet even in its hidden state, the island is not completely cut off from the world. The Psijics maintain telepathic contact with certain oracles of the weird, mystics scattered throughout Tamriel who serve as the Order's eyes and ears. If one were to find such an oracle and somehow trace the telepathic connection back to its source, it might be theoretically possible to locate Artaeum even in its exile, though the difficulty of such a feat would be astronomical. The island is also protected by powerful warding magic, even when it does manifest in Nirn. Only those whom the Psijics have specifically attuned to these wards can enter Artaeum. This attunement is not merely a matter of permission. It seems to involve some fundamental alteration of one's magical signature, a resonance that allows passage through barriers that would otherwise prove impenetrable. Without this attunement, Artaeum appears strange and half-deserted to visitors, with key members of the Order being completely invisible and quest-givers refusing to acknowledge the visitor's presence. Artaeum is, in every sense, a place apart. It is the physical manifestation of the Psijic Order's philosophy, separate from the world, observing without being observed, powerful enough to influence reality while remaining beyond its normal constraints. To walk its shores is to step outside the normal flow of time and space, to exist for a moment in a place where the rules that govern the rest of Tamriel simply do not apply. Chapter 3. The Leadership, Richmaster, Iakisis, and the Conclave. For an organization that values wisdom and knowledge above all else, it should come as no surprise that the Psijic Order's leadership structure reflects these priorities. At the apex of this hierarchy stands the Writer Master, and for over 3,000 years, that position was held by a single individual, Iakisis. Iakisis was not simply long-lived. He was arguably one of the most powerful and knowledgeable mages in all of Tamrielic history. The earliest confirmed record of his leadership dates to 1E20, when the renowned Breton sage Vuarnet traveled to Artaeum to meet with him. From that point forward, through the entirety of the First Era, Through the chaos of the Second Era and well into later ages, Iachesis guided the Psijic Order with a wisdom born of millennia. His power was said to rival even that of Sothasil, the clockwork god himself, a comparison that very few mortals could ever claim. As a Rite Master, Iachesis served as the absolute leader of the Order, the final authority on matters of policy, the arbiter of disputes, and the keeper of the Order's most profound secrets. But he did not rule alone. Supporting him was the Conclave of the 11 Forces, also known as the Council of Artaeum, the ruling body of the Psijic Order. The Conclave is named after the 11 forces that form the foundation of Psijic philosophy, and membership in this council represents the pinnacle of achievement within the Order. These are not merely powerful mages, they are individuals who have devoted centuries to the study of the old ways, who have unlocked secrets that would drive lesser minds to madness, and who possess magical abilities so profound that their very existence poses what scholars call arcane risk. Senior members of the Conclave exert tremendous stress on the orbic forces around them, threatening to make magical forces and artifacts spin wildly out of control through their mere presence. This is not hyperbole or metaphorical language. It is a literal danger that limits how directly the most powerful Psijics can act in the world. The Conclave's membership has changed over the millennia, though records of specific members are rare and often deliberately obscured. In the late Second Era, during the events surrounding the Somerset Crisis, the Conclave included the accomplished sage Valseren, a master of mysticism and esoteric knowledge who had served the Order for over 300 years. Her presence on the Conclave spoke to her extraordinary capabilities and the trust Iachesis placed in her judgment. Below the Rite Master and the Conclave, the Order maintains the position of Lawmaster, held in the late Third Era by Solaris. The Lawmaster serves as the keeper of the Order's accumulated knowledge, the one responsible for organizing and preserving the countless texts, scrolls, and grimoires that fill Kapora Tower's libraries. Solaris was believed by many to be Iachesis' intended successor, though events would ultimately take a different turn. The process by which new members are inducted into the Psijic Order remains shrouded in mystery, deliberately obscured from outside observation. What is known is that the selection process is incredibly rigorous and highly ritualized. The Order does not recruit actively. Rather, they seem to identify individuals of exceptional potential through methods not well understood by outsiders. Sometimes a Psijic will personally travel to retrieve a promising candidate, as happened when the mystic Hyliand discovered the young boy Trectus, who would become Varnus Galerian. Other times, individuals of proven magical ability and worthy character are extended invitations after demonstrating their capabilities. The historical record reveals just how selective the Order truly is. According to the Pocket Guide to the Empire, 3rd edition, in the roughly 1,000 years leading up to 3E 430, only 17 new members were accepted into the Psijic Order. 17 souls in a millennium, an average of 1 new member every 60 years. This glacial pace of expansion speaks to the Order's unwavering commitment to quality over quantity, to finding individuals who not only possess exceptional magical talent, but also the wisdom, temperament, and dedication necessary to preserve the old ways. Interestingly, in a sudden break from tradition, the Order accepted over 30 new members in just 2 years, between 3E 430 and 3E 432. The reasons for this unprecedented surge in recruitment remain unexplained, though scholars have speculated that the Order might have foreseen coming events that would require a larger membership, or perhaps they identified a generation of particularly promising candidates. Whatever the reason, it represents a significant anomaly in the Order's history. Once accepted, initiates face a path of study that can span centuries. The Psijic Order is in no hurry to advance its members through ranks or declare them fully trained. An apprentice might study for 300 years or more, gradually accumulating knowledge and wisdom under the tutelage of senior members. This is made possible through life extension magic, techniques that allow Psijics to live far beyond the normal span of their race. While High Elves naturally have lifespans measured in centuries, the Psijics have perfected methods that extend life even further. Members of men races, who would normally live less than a century, can study for hundreds of years thanks to these techniques. The most powerful members have lived for over a millennium, and Iarchis himself existed for nearly 4,000 years before his death. To become a Psijic requires, in the words of the Order itself, a noble heart and a solemn commitment to the good. Achieving membership in the Psijic Order is a serious and lasting endeavor. You must be prudent but fearless, withdrawn but compassionate. It is not enough to be powerful. One must embody the philosophical ideals that the Order represents. This emphasis on character as much as capability has ensured that, despite occasional departures of members like Varnus Galerian and catastrophic betrayals like Manimarco, the Order has maintained its integrity and purpose across the millennia. The leadership structure, from Writer Master to Conclave to Law Master to the newest initiate, reflects a hierarchy not of political power, but of accumulated wisdom. Each level represents not just greater magical capability, but deeper understanding of the forces that govern reality. It is a system designed not for efficiency or expansion, but for the preservation and careful transmission of knowledge that predates recorded history. Chapter 4. The Bright Student, Varnus Galerian, and the Democratization of Magic. If the Psijic Order represents the ultimate expression of knowledge, jealously guarded, and wisdom carefully preserved, then Varnus Galerian represents the opposite impulse, the burning desire to share that knowledge with the world, no matter the cost. Born as Trectus, in the early years of the Second Era, he entered the world not as a noble scion or a privileged scholar, but as a servant on the estate of Lord Gyrnas of Solitish-on-Ker, a minor nobleman of Somerset. His parents were common labourers, bound to the land and the Lord's service. In that stratified society, Trectus should have lived and died in obscurity, perhaps passing on his servitude to his own children in an endless cycle of peasant toil. But Trectus possessed a secret that marked him as exceptional. He could read. This might seem like a small thing, an unremarkable skill. But in the domain of Lord Girnas, literacy among servants was not merely forbidden, it was considered an abomination of nature, a perversion of the proper order of things. Lord Girnas, advised by counselors who convinced him that literate servants were dangerous to themselves and their lords, had closed all bookstalls in Psijic Order and forbade the teaching of letters to any of common birth. But Trectus's father had secretly taught himself to read, smuggling books and studying by candlelight in the deepest hours of night. And then, in an act of rebellion and hope, he taught his son. The secret could not be kept forever. Trectus's mother, described as ignorant and deeply religious, betrayed her husband and the other book smugglers to the authorities, whether out of genuine belief that they were committing sin or out of fear of the consequences if their actions were discovered by other means. The smugglers were arrested. There was no trial, no hearing, no chance to plead their case. Lord Girnas simply ordered them hanged. Trectus's father was left hanging for weeks, his body a warning to any other servant who might consider rising above their station. 3 months later, unable to bear the sight of his father's corpse and the cruel injustice of a world that would kill a man for teaching his son to read, young Trectus ran away. He had no destination, no plan, only the desperate need to escape the estate that had become his prison and his nightmare. He nearly died in his flight. Starvation, exposure, and despair had reduced him to little more than a breathing corpse when he was found by Heliand, a mystic of the Psijic Order. Heliand saw something in this dying boy, some spark of potential that could not be ignored. He brought Trectus to Artaeum, and there presented him to Riddermaster Iacasis himself. Iacasis looked upon this common boy, this servant's son, who had nearly perished for the crime of literacy, and recognized what Heliand had seen: exceptional potential, a mind that could unlock the deepest secrets of the old ways. He took Trectus as his personal pupil, a remarkable honor for any initiate, and bestowed upon him a new name to mark his new life: Venus Galerion. Under Iacasis' tutelage, Venus Galerion flourished. He mastered the principles of mysticism with a speed and depth that astonished even the ancient Writer-Master. He studied the 11 forces, learned to manipulate reality through the old ways, and became widely recognized as one of the 2 most brilliant students the Psijic Order had seen in centuries. The other was a fellow Altmer named Manimarco, and together they represented the pinnacle of what a Psijic could achieve. But Venus carried something within him that set him apart from other Psijics, something that had been forged in the fires of his traumatic childhood, a burning belief that knowledge should never be hoarded, that wisdom should not be the exclusive province of the privileged. That magic was meant to be shared. He looked at the Psijic Order, this organization that had saved his life and given him power beyond imagining, and he saw the same aristocratic arrogance that had led Lord Girnas to forbid literacy among his servants. The Psijics claimed to preserve knowledge, but to Venus, they were simply hiding it away, letting the common people of Tamriel live in ignorance while they congratulated themselves on their own wisdom. The Order's philosophy of careful, measured intervention and extreme selectivity in sharing knowledge struck Venus as fundamentally unjust. His dissatisfaction with the Order came to a head when he confronted Manimarco beneath the grey Sephora Tower. Venus had discovered that his fellow student, his rival and peer, had been experimenting with necromancy, the dark art of raising and enslaving the dead. He pleaded with Manimarco to cease these vile studies, warning him, "Your wicked mysticism is no way to wield your power, bringing horror to the spirit world. Your studies must cease." Manimarco laughed in his face. When Venus brought these concerns to Iacasis and the conclave, expecting them to imprison or at least closely monitor such a dangerous student, the Order's response shocked and disappointed him. They acknowledged that Manimarco had crossed ethical lines, admitted that his studies were disturbing, but their solution was merely to send him away from Artaeum, to release him back to the mainland, with a warning to conduct his experiments elsewhere. To Venus, this was not justice, it was cowardice. It was the Order pretending problems did not exist, rather than confronting them directly. Galerion reportedly said to his masters, "You have found a wolf and sent the beast to flocks of sheep." The conclave ordered him to speak no more of Manimarco. But Venus Galerion did not forget. He could not forget. And he began to understand that if the world needed magic to be shared freely, if the common people needed protection from threats the Psijics refused to confront, then he would have to create a new organization to do what the ancient order would not. In 2E 2030, Venus Galerion began his great work. He started collecting mages from around the Somerset Isles, drawing in magic users from all social classes, not just the nobility and intelligentsia. He operated out of the urban center of Firsthold, openly challenging the conventional wisdom that magical experiments should only be conducted in unpopulated areas. And most shockingly, he proposed something that seemed almost insane to the magical establishment, making magical items, potions, and even spells available to any member of the general public who could afford to pay. This was revolutionary. Magic had always been the province of either secretive organizations like the Psijic Order or individual wizards working in isolation. The idea of creating shops where common merchants could purchase spellcasting services, where farmers could buy healing potions as easily as they bought grain, where anyone with coin could commission magical items without needing years of study. This was unprecedented in Tamrielic history. The response was predictable. Galerion attracted the animosity of nearly everyone. Local rulers feared magical experiments conducted in populated areas. Traditional mages despised the idea of sharing their secrets with the unwashed masses. The Psijic Order looked upon his work with something between disappointment and disapproval. Even his former master, Iacasis, called him before the king of Firsthold, Ryalis XII, to justify these radical intentions. But Galerion would not be deterred. Drawing on his own background of want and injustice, he articulated a philosophy that magic was meant to be shared, that knowledge grew stronger when distributed rather than hoarded. He founded the Mages Guild, an organization built on principles diametrically opposed to the Psijic Order's secrecy and selectivity. The Mages Guild was designed to be accessible. Each guild hall was ruled by a guild head, assisted by a master of incunabula and a master at arms. The masters oversaw councils of specialized mages, creating a distributed structure that could spread across entire provinces. And critically, Galerian established the Order of the Lamp, a knightly order dedicated to protecting the Mages Guild. He understood what the ancient nobility had always known. Money alone does not buy loyalty, but a properly structured organization of honor and mutual interest could create security that gold could never purchase. The guild grew rapidly, establishing branches across Somerset and then spreading to the mainland. There were setbacks. Numerous rulers initially forbade the guild in their domains, fearing the concentration of magical power or simply distrusting mages on principle. But their heirs, or their heirs' heirs, eventually recognized the value of what Galerian was offering. The Mages Guild became a powerful force throughout Tamriel, making magic accessible to the common person in ways that had never before been possible. Galerian's legacy is complex. He democratized magic, bringing its benefits to millions who would otherwise have lived and died without ever experiencing its wonders. But he also created an organization that, over the centuries, would become mired in political infighting and bureaucracy, losing sight of his founding vision. Late in life, Galerion himself became disillusioned, bitterly stating, "The guild has become nothing more than an intricate morass of political infighting." His greatest trial still lay ahead, a confrontation with the one person who had helped push him away from the Psijic Order in the first place, Manimarco, the King of Worms. Chapter 5. The Dark Student. Manimarco and the Path of the Necromancer. Where Vinus Galerion represents the light path of shared knowledge and democratic magic, Manimarco represents something altogether darker, the corruption of learning, the perversion of wisdom, and the horrifying possibility that knowledge without moral foundation can transform a brilliant student into a monster. Like Galerion, Manimarco was born an Altmer, likely in the early years of the First Era, though some sources suggest he may have been present during the Middle Dawn, a temporal anomaly that lasted from 1E 1200 to 1E 2208. If true, this would make him impossibly ancient even before his transformation into undeath. Manimarco claimed to be not merely Altmer, but Oldmer, one of the original race of elves before they split into distinct subgroups. Whether this claim holds any truth remains a mystery, but it speaks to his grandiose self-perception and his belief that he stood apart from and above ordinary mortals. What is certain is that at some point, Manimarco joined the Psijic Order on Artaeum. Like Galerion, he quickly established himself as one of the most brilliant novices the Order had seen in generations. The two became rivals, peers who pushed each other to greater heights of magical understanding. But where Galerion's heart remained light and warm, driven by memories of injustice to seek a more equitable world, Manimarco's heart was dark and cold, drawn inexorably toward forbidden knowledge and the power it promised. The crucial difference emerged in their chosen fields of study. While Galerion explored mysticism and sought to understand the fundamental forces of reality, Manimarco became fascinated with necromancy and soul magic. These were not entirely forbidden arts. Even the Psijics acknowledged that understanding death was part of understanding life, that the spirits of the dead could be communicated with respectfully, But Manimarco went far beyond theoretical study or respectful communion with ancestors. He began experimenting with raising corpses, binding souls to his will, and trapping the essence of living beings in soul gems. The full extent of his experiments beneath Sepura Tower may never be known, but they were extensive enough and disturbing enough that eventually even Galerian, his friend and rival, could no longer ignore what was happening. The confrontation beneath the grey Sepura Tower was a pivotal moment. Galerian, perhaps hoping to save his friend from a dark path, pleaded with Manimarco to abandon his studies. He argued that this wicked mysticism was no way to wield power, that bringing horror to the spirit world through necromantic experiments violated the fundamental principles of the old ways. The ancestors deserved respect, not enslavement. The dead should be allowed to rest, not raised as puppets. Soul trapping was an abomination that wounded the natural order itself. Manimarco's response was laughter, not nervous laughter or defensive mockery, but genuine amusement at Galerian's naivety. Manimarco had no intention of stopping. He hated the ways of life and peace that Galerian championed. To Manimarco, death was not an ending, but a tool, and the dead were resources to be exploited by those wise enough and strong enough to claim them. When Galerian brought his concerns to the Psijic leadership, he expected swift action. This was not merely theoretical disagreement or philosophical difference. Manimarco was actively practicing dark arts that violated ethical boundaries. But the Psijic Order, perhaps reflecting the same aristocratic reluctance to confront problems directly that had characterized Altmer society for millennia, chose a path of minimal intervention. They sent Manimarco away from Artaeum. That was all. No imprisonment, no binding oaths, no permanent restriction on his activities. He was simply released to the mainland with the understanding that he should not practice his forbidden arts openly. To Galerian, this was worse than doing nothing. It was actively enabling Manimarco's evil by giving him freedom to operate without oversight. Galerian was proven horrifyingly correct. Once freed from even the minimal restraints of Artaeum, Manimarco threw himself into necromancy with abandon. He traveled throughout Tamriel, collecting forbidden texts and cursed artifacts. He sought out the hidden manuscripts, describing how the ancient dragon priests enthralled their Draugr servants. He found ancient Ayleid tablets regarding the summoning of spirits of the dead. He acquired the Crimson Book of Skulls, which the legendary mage Shalidor himself had thought destroyed. He may have even bargained with Molag Bal, the Daedric Prince of Domination and the father of vampires, though this remains unconfirmed. Manimarco began gathering followers, unscrupulous mages who were drawn to the power promised by necromancy, outcast witches who had been rejected by other organizations, and vile reachmen who cared nothing for ethical constraints. He dubbed his new organization the Order of the Black Worm, a deliberate mockery of monastic orders dedicated to the divines. Where those orders sought enlightenment and spiritual growth, the worm cult sought power over death itself. The transformation Manimarco underwent during this period is difficult to fully comprehend. He created black soul gems, artifacts that circumvented the Mages Guild's restrictions on soul-trapping sapient beings. allowing even weak soul-trapping spells to capture the souls of people, not animals, but thinking, feeling individuals. These became central to his power, a way to fuel necromantic rituals and accumulate spiritual energy on a scale previously thought impossible. And somewhere during these dark years, Manimarco achieved something that would echo through history. He transformed himself into what many sources claim was the first lich ever created, embracing undeath to gain immortality. Though some scholars note that other leeches may have existed before him, Manimarco perfected the process in ways no other had achieved, making him functionally the first true lich in the modern understanding of the term. The process by which this was accomplished remains obscure, but the result was undeniable. Manimarco was no longer truly alive, no longer bound by the mortal limitations of flesh and blood. He had become something else, a living corpse animated by will and magic, a being that existed in defiance of the natural order he had once studied under the Psijics. By the middle of the Second Era, Manimarco's power had grown to terrifying proportions. He had established hideouts throughout Tamriel, with his primary sanctum believed to be Skurg Barrow in the Dragontail Mountains. His followers numbered in the hundreds, perhaps thousands, and they worked tirelessly to bring him cursed artifacts and forbidden knowledge. His alchemical shelf was cluttered with blood-tainted herbs and oils, sweet akaviri poison, dust collected from saints, sheafs of human skin, toadstools, roots, and ingredients so vile their very names are best left unspoken. Like a spider in his web, Manimarco drew power from all these sources, sucking their essence into himself. The corruption ran so deep that it sank to his very core. Though he retained the name Manimarco, his body and mind had left humanity behind entirely, becoming something monstrous, something that viewed the living as nothing more than potential materials for his experiments. It was inevitable that Galerion would eventually confront his former peer. The worm cult had grown too powerful, its influence spreading like a disease throughout Tamriel. The Psijic Order, with its philosophy of non-intervention, would not act. But the Mages Guild, built on Galerion's principle that knowledge must serve the good of all, could not stand idly by while necromancers desecrated the dead and enslaved souls. Galerion gathered an army of mages and knights of the Order of the Lamp. He headed north with this force to a cursed mountain path where Manimarco waited with his own army of necromancers and undead thralls. The two former friends, two of the most brilliant students the Psijic Order had ever produced, met for the last time on that blood-soaked battlefield. Galerion called out to his former peer, "Worm King, surrender your artifacts and their power to me, and you shall live as befits the dead." The name stuck. From that moment forward, Manimarco would be known as the Worm King, the King of Worms, a title that perfectly captured both his necromantic power and the revulsion he inspired. Manimarco's answer was a hollow laugh. "You die first." The battle that followed was like nothing Tamriel had seen before or since. Fire and frost cascaded through the air. Lightning arched across the sky in a dragon's crackling sigh. Battle mages flew through the air like leaves caught in a storm, raining magical destruction down upon their enemies. Necromancers called forth corpses that burst from the earth, only to be shattered into nothingness by floods of holy light. It was a maelstrom of energy unleashed, with blood cascading in rivers down the mountainside. Galerion fought with everything he had, shaking the mountain to its base with the force of his magic. The undead horde fell before the combined might of the Mages Guild. Necromancers were slain or driven off. Victory seemed within reach. But then, Mannimarco revealed the full extent of what he had become. Rising from the depths of the battlefield came the Worm King himself, no longer remotely human in appearance. His eyes burned with dark fire. From his toothless maw, he vomited darkness with each exhalation, and all who breathed that fetid air felt the icy touch of death itself. Above the mountain, darkness overcame pale light as Mannimarco's power reached its terrible zenith. Galerion managed, in his final moments of life, to strip the cursed artifacts from Mannimarco's skeletal claws. Without these focuses for his power, the Worm King's abilities failed. The battle ended not with Mannimarco's destruction, but with his retreat and disappearance. 1,000 mages and necromancers perished that day, good and evil falling together in the carnage. Among the dead was Venus Galerion himself, the founder of the Mages Guild, who gave his life to stop the monster his former friend had become. But Mannimarco survived. In his undeath, he endured, and though his cult was scattered, though his power was broken for a time, he would return again and again throughout history, a dark shadow that could never quite be banished, an eternal reminder that knowledge without moral foundation leads not to enlightenment, but to horror. The fate of Galerion's corpse adds a final, grotesque note to this tragic tale. Mannimarco himself would later claim to have raised his former friend as a worm thrall, boasting, "I developed a particular fondness for Galerion, ill-preserved though he may be." If true, this means the ghost of the mage, who had dedicated his life to sharing knowledge, was forced to serve the King of Worms in undeath, a fate that would represent the ultimate desecration of everything Galerion stood for. Whether Mannimarco's claim was literal truth or merely psychological warfare, meant to demoralize the Mages Guild, it serves as a perfect symbol of how completely Mannimarco had abandoned any vestige of the old ways he once studied, how thoroughly he had embraced corruption over wisdom. Chapter 6. Other Voices from the Order, a pantheon of legendary mages. While Venus Galerion and Mannimarco represent the two most famous members of the Psijic Order, their stories only scratch the surface of the remarkable individuals who have walked the halls of Sapora Tower. The Order, across its 3,000-year history, has included some of the most powerful and influential figures in Tamrielic history, each bringing their own unique perspective and capabilities to the ancient organization. Perhaps the most unexpected member of the Psijic Order was Sotha Sil, one of the Tribunal, the three living gods of Morrowind. That a figure of such divine power would associate with the Psijics speaks volumes about the Order's reputation and capabilities. Sotha Sil maintained a relationship with Artaeum throughout the First Era and into the Second. Though he was absent more often than present, his duties as a god demanding his attention elsewhere. When he did visit the island, Sotha Sil took time to train young Psijic initiates, sharing insights that bridged the gap between the Order's philosophy and his own pursuit of perfection through clockwork. His teachings on the nature of perception and understanding have been preserved. There are layers to understanding all things. The common man looks at an object and fits it into a place in his way of thinking. Those skilled in the old ways, in the way of the Psijic, in mysticism, can see an object and identify it by its proper role. But one more layer is needed to be peeled back to achieve understanding. You must identify the object by its role and its truth and interpret that meaning. This teaching perfectly encapsulates the Psijic approach to knowledge, that surface understanding is insufficient, that even magical comprehension is merely one layer, and that true wisdom requires peeling back every veil until the fundamental truth is revealed. That such wisdom came from Sotha Sil and was considered worthy of teaching to Psijic initiates suggests the depth of respect between the clockwork god and the Order. It was through the Psijic's dreaming cave that Sotha Sil accessed oblivion to negotiate the Cold Harbor Compact, the agreement with multiple Daedric princes that has protected Nirn from direct divine invasion for millennia. The fact that he trusted the Order with knowledge of this mission and relied on their facilities to accomplish it speaks to a relationship built on mutual respect and shared commitment to protecting Tamriel from cosmic-level threats. Another remarkable member, though less publicly celebrated, was Devaith Fear, a Dunmer mage whose friendship with Sotha Sil brought him into contact with the Psijic Order. Fear was known for his experiments with the disease Corpus during the events surrounding the Nerevarine prophecy in Morrowind. His willingness to delve into dangerous magical territory while maintaining his relationship with the ethically conscious Psijics suggests that the Order was more nuanced in its approach to controversial magic than their rejection of Manimako might suggest. There is a difference, apparently, between studying dangerous phenomena to understand and contain them and embracing dark arts for the sake of power. In the late Second Era, during the Somerset Crisis, Valsaren emerged as one of the Order's most accomplished members. A master of mysticism and esoteric knowledge, she had devoted over 300 years to scholarly pursuits and arcane research. Her dedication was so complete, her wisdom so profound, that she was invited to join the conclave of the 11 Forces, the ruling council of the Order, a rare honor that spoke to her exceptional capabilities. But Valsaren's story is also deeply personal. She met and fell in love with another sage named Lathan while both were studying on Artaeum. They married and started a family, proving that the Psijics were not the emotionless, detached scholars they sometimes appeared to be. They had a daughter, Ealdawe, who became the center of their world. When Ealdawe contracted an unknown illness, the entire Psijic Order worked tirelessly to save her. Even Ritamaster Iacusis himself, with all his millennia of accumulated knowledge and power, applied his expertise to finding a cure. But some mysteries remain unsolved, even for the Psijics. The child died young, and Valsiren and Lathan were forced to confront the reality that for all their power, for all their understanding of the fundamental forces of reality, they could not save the one person who mattered most to them. This tragedy shaped Valsiren profoundly. she threw herself even deeper into her studies, perhaps seeking in knowledge some answer to the question of mortality that had taken her daughter. When events in Somerset required the Order to break its long isolation, Valseren became one of the key figures working to prevent a Daedric conspiracy that threatened to unravel reality itself. Following Iakis's death during that crisis, Valseren was chosen to become the temporary Writer-Master, taking up the burden of leadership that had been carried by Iakis for over 3,000 years. That the Order chose her, despite her personal losses and her comparatively young age by Psijic standards, speaks to her extraordinary wisdom and capabilities. Vastari represents yet another path a Psijic might take, contemporary with both Vanus, Galerion, and Manimarco. She studied alongside them on Artaeum. Unlike Galerion, she did not leave to democratize magic. Unlike Manimarco, she did not embrace dark arts for power. Instead, Vastari walked a middle path that would bring her into conflict with both of her fellow students. She developed an innovation called the Sigil Geode, a device intended to communicate with the dead in ways that respected their nature as spirits, rather than enslaving them as Manimarco did. It was necromancy, certainly, but necromancy with ethical boundaries, a way to speak with ancestors without violating their fundamental dignity. She hoped Galerion, with his innovative spirit and desire to expand magical knowledge, would appreciate this development. Instead, Galerion rejected the Sigil Geode out of disgust, unable to see past his revulsion at anything relating to death magic. To him, Vastari's work was too similar to Manimarco's, even though her intentions and methods were completely different. This rejection hurt Vastari deeply and demonstrated the limitations of even Galerion's progressive vision. He could accept democratizing magic for the masses, but he could not accept that necromancy might be practiced ethically. Fearing that Manimarco would seek her out and try to corrupt or steal her research, Vastari fled Artaeum with her husband, leaving the Psijic Order entirely. She would later work with Manimarco on an expedition to Cold Harbor, retrieving a cache of black soul gems that would set in motion their wider circulation throughout Tamriel. Whether this partnership was voluntary or coerced, whether Vastari maintained her ethical boundaries or was gradually corrupted by Manimarco's influence, remains a subject of scholarly debate. These stories illustrate an important truth about the Psijic Order. It is not a monolithic organization of identical philosophers mechanically following ancient precepts. It is a collection of brilliant, flawed, passionate individuals, each pursuing wisdom in their own way, each bringing their own perspectives and limitations to the eternal quest to understand the 11 forces. Some, like Sotha Sil, achieved divinity. Some, like Galerion, changed the world. Some, like Manimarco, fell into darkness. And some, like Valseren, carried on the Order's mission through personal tragedy and cosmic crisis, bearing the weight of leadership in the face of impossible odds. Each of these voices contributed to the rich, complex tapestry of the Psijic Order's history, proving that even an organization dedicated to preserving ancient ways can be dynamic, evolving, and deeply human in its composition. Chapter 7: Powers Beyond Mortal Ken. the capabilities of the Psijic Order. To discuss the Psijic Order's abilities is to venture into territory where the boundaries between possible and impossible begin to blur, where magic transcends mere spell casting and becomes something closer to reality manipulation. The Psijics are not simply powerful mages. They are individuals who have spent centuries, sometimes millennia, studying forces that most scholars barely comprehend exist. The result is a level of magical capability that rivals and sometimes exceeds the power of gods themselves. The most dramatic demonstration of Psijic power is their ability to transport the entire island of Artaeum between planes of existence. This is not teleportation, not a simple matter of moving matter from one location to another. This is fundamentally altering the relationship between a physical location and the fabric of reality, shifting an entire island with all its structures, inhabitants, and accumulated magical energies into a pocket realm that exists beyond the normal boundaries of Neon. Even the Daedric princes, beings of godlike power, cannot locate Artaeum when the Psijics choose to hide it. The mechanism behind this incredible feat remains a jealously guarded secret, but its implications are staggering. If the Order can move an entire island between planes, what else might they be capable of? Could they shift individual objects or people? Could they create permanent bridges between realms? The fact that they choose not to display or exploit this power for political gain speaks to their philosophical commitment to observation rather than intervention, to understanding rather than domination. Time manipulation represents another signature ability of advanced Psijics. This is not the simple haste or slow spells known to conventional mages, mere adjustments to perception or movement speed. Psijic time magic can literally freeze the passage of time in specific locations, can rewind events, can create temporal anomalies that allow one to step backward through the stream of moments. In the Second Era, when temporal rifts began appearing across Tamriel, it was Psijic intervention that sealed these breaches, preventing catastrophic damage to the timeline itself. The skill line developed by the Psijics, for those they deem worthy, demonstrates the practical applications of this temporal mastery. Time, stop, allows a Psijic to freeze the passage of time at a specific location, gradually reducing the movement speed of enemies caught within until they are completely frozen in place, locked in a single moment, while the rest of the world continues around them. Borrowed time extends this effect, negating the next heal any stunned enemy would receive, turning their frozen moment into a vulnerability that persists even after time resumes. Accelerate bends time and space around the caster, granting increased movement speed and enhanced critical strike capability, allowing the Psijic to move through moments that barely exist, striking from angles that shouldn't be possible. Channeled acceleration extends this effect dramatically, though at the cost of requiring a casting time, allowing extended periods of enhanced temporal flow. But perhaps the most remarkable ability is Undo, the ultimate expression of Psijic temporal mastery. This technique allows the caster to step backward in time, resetting their health, magicka, stamina, and even their physical position to what they were 4 seconds in the past. In essence, the Psijic can undo the last 4 seconds of their existence, erasing damage taken, resources spent, and poor positioning. This is not healing or teleportation. This is literally rewriting the recent past, creating a personal temporal loop that defies the normal flow of causality. The ability can even be cast while under crowd control effects and automatically grants immunity to such effects, suggesting that the temporal manipulation itself exists outside the normal rules of magic. Beyond these temporal abilities, the Psijics have mastered what they call mysticism, though this term carries meanings far beyond what conventional mages understand. For most scholars, mysticism is simply another school of magic concerned with detecting and dispelling spells, manipulating souls, and perceiving that which is hidden. For the Psijics, mysticism is the old way itself, the fundamental practice through which they bind the forces of nature to individual will. This distinction is not semantic. When a conventional mage casts a spell, they are manipulating magicka, the residue of Magnus and the Magnagie left behind when they fled from creation. When a Psijic practices the old ways, they are working with the earth bones themselves, the crystallized patterns left by the El Nofe who sacrifice themselves to create the laws of reality. The effects may appear similar, but the underlying mechanism is fundamentally different. And this difference allows Psijics to accomplish things that conventional magic cannot. Senior members of the Psijic Order possess what scholars call arcane risk. Their very presence exerts tremendous stress on the orbic forces around them, threatening to make magical forces and artifacts spin wildly out of control. This is why the most powerful Psijics rarely intervene directly in worldly affairs. Their personal involvement could cause more chaos than the problems they're trying to solve. Instead, they work through intermediaries, guide younger members, and provide counsel from a safe distance. There are also persistent rumors of a silent, magical communication that allows Psijics to share thoughts across vast distances. This calling would represent a form of telepathy so sophisticated that those being communicated with might not even realize a conversation is taking place. The Order maintains telepathic contact with certain oracles of the weird scattered throughout Tamriel, mystics who serve as their eyes and ears in the world. Whether this represents the same calling or a different technique remains unclear, but it suggests capabilities that go far beyond conventional magic. The Psijics have also demonstrated the ability to render themselves and structures insubstantial, phasing partially out of reality. This is how Artaeum could defend itself even before the technique of shifting to a pocket realm was developed. Intruders would simply find themselves unable to make contact with anything on the island, their weapons and spells passing through buildings and inhabitants as if through mist. Combined with their temporal abilities, this creates a defensive capability that makes the Order essentially immune to conventional attack. Their mastery of scrying and divination allows them to observe events across great distances and possibly even peer into potential futures. The Order knew of threats before they manifested, warned of dangers before they became apparent, and positioned themselves to intervene at precisely the critical moment. Whether this represents true precognition or simply exceptional intelligence gathering and pattern recognition remains debatable, but the practical effect is the same. The Psijics operate with information that should not be available to them. Life extension magic, as previously mentioned, allows Psijics to live far beyond the normal span of their race. This is not simply slowing aging or maintaining youthful appearance. It is fundamentally altering the relationship between the individual and mortality itself. Iakesis lived for nearly 4,000 years. Members of men races, who naturally live less than a century, can study for hundreds of years. This extended lifespan is critical to the Order's philosophy, as mastering the old ways requires dedication measured not in years but in centuries. The Order's power also extends to the creation and maintenance of powerful artifacts and enchantments. The persistent enchantments within Sepura Tower, adjustable only through control globes requiring years of experience to operate, represent magical work of such sophistication that most mages couldn't even understand the principles involved, let alone replicate them. The warding magic protecting Artaeum, which requires specific attunement to breach, demonstrates an understanding of security magic far beyond conventional wards and barriers. Perhaps most tellingly, members of the Psijic Order have been compared in power to the Tribunal, the living gods of Morrowind. When Sotha Sil, a member of that divine triad, chose to associate with the Psijics and sought their counsel on matters of cosmic importance, he treated them as peers rather than subordinates. Ritamaster Iakesis was said to rival Sotha Sil himself in terms of magical capability, a comparison that elevates the greatest Psijics to a level of power normally reserved for Daedric princes and Aedric spirits. All of this raises a fascinating question. If the Psijic Order possesses such incredible power, why do they not rule Tamriel? Why do they not impose their will on the world, shaping events to match their understanding of how things should be? The answer lies in their philosophy. The Psijics understand that knowledge and power are not the same as wisdom. They recognize that direct intervention, no matter how well-intentioned, often creates unforeseen consequences that cascade into greater problems. They have seen civilizations rise and fall, have watched as rulers with good intentions paved roads to catastrophe, and have learned the hard lesson that sometimes the greatest wisdom lies in restraint. The Order intervenes only when absolutely necessary, only when the alternative is catastrophe on a scale that threatens reality itself. And even then, they work subtly, guiding rather than commanding, suggesting rather than demanding, allowing others to make choices while ensuring that the most dangerous possibilities are forestalled. It is a philosophy of minimal intervention, of careful stewardship rather than active rulership, and it has served them for over 3,000 years. The powers of the Psijic Order are not meant to impress or intimidate. They are tools for understanding, capabilities developed in service of studying the fundamental forces that bind reality together. That such powers could reshape Tamriel if unleashed is merely a side effect of pursuing knowledge to its ultimate conclusion. The true miracle is not that the Psijics possess such power, but that they have the wisdom and restraint not to abuse it. Chapter 8. The Eye of Magnus, Skyrim's most dangerous artifact. The year is 4E 201, and beneath the ancient Nordic city of Artaeum, members of the College of Winterhold have uncovered something that should have remained buried forever. The Eye of Magnus, an artifact of such immense power that its very existence threatens the stability of reality itself. The Eye is unlike anything seen in Tamriel's recorded history. It is described as resembling a massive sphere of unknown material, glowing with an inner light that seems to pulse with barely contained energy. Its origins are completely mysterious, though scholars have drawn connections between it and the Elder Scrolls themselves, suggesting that both might be artifacts from before the creation of Mundus, objects that exist partially outside the normal flow of causality. Ancient Khajiit mythology offers one possible explanation, claiming that when Magnus, the god of magic, fled from Boethia and Lorkaj during the creation of the world, he could only see out of one eye. When Azura judged him as too full of fear to rule a sphere, she tore out his remaining eye. Whether the Eye of Magnus is literally that torn-out eye, or simply named in honor of that mythological event, the connection to Magnus himself suggests that this is an artifact of divine origin, a piece of the god of magic made manifest. The Nords of ancient Sarthal discovered the eye when they were building their city, and they immediately recognized it as something dangerous. Rather than studying it or attempting to use its power, they buried it deep beneath their foundations, hoping to keep it hidden from the world. But the Snow Elves learned of its existence and coveted the artifact for themselves. The Night of Tears, the brutal assault on Sarthal that became one of the defining moments of early Nordic history, was not simply an act of aggression, but a calculated attempt to seize the Eye of Magnus. Ysgramor rallied his people to prevent the elves from obtaining the artifact, and the Nords were ultimately successful in keeping the eye from Aldmeri hands. But the cost was terrible. Sarthal was destroyed, countless Nords perished, and the artifact was buried again beneath the ruins, sealed away and forgotten for thousands of years. In 4E 201, when the College of Winterhold excavated Artaeum, they had no idea what they were about to unleash. The moment the expedition disturbed the section of wall behind which the eye was sealed, they set in motion a chain of events that would threaten not just the college, but potentially all of Skyrim, and perhaps beyond. Almost immediately after the eye's discovery, members of the Psijic Order began appearing to the excavation leader, a student who would later become the Archmage. A Psijic monk named Narration appeared in a vision, warning that the excavation team had set in motion a series of events that you cannot stop, that they would be judged on their actions, and that the Psijic Order would be watching over them. This warning was not empty threat or mystical posturing. It was a statement of fact from an organization that understood exactly what the Eye of Magnus represented and what would happen if its power was unleashed. When the eye was transported to the College of Winterhold for study, another Psijic Quaranier appeared to provide more explicit warnings. He explained that the artifact possessed power beyond mortal comprehension, that its very presence at the college was a danger, and that great care must be taken to prevent anyone from attempting to channel its energy. He froze time itself to deliver this warning privately, demonstrating the lengths to which the Psijics were willing to go to prevent catastrophe. But warnings, no matter how dire, cannot always prevent disaster. Ankano, a Thalmor advisor who had been assigned to the college ostensibly to observe and offer counsel, revealed his true purpose. He intended to harness the Eye's power for the old Mary Dominion. The Thalmor, in their arrogance, believed they could control what ancient Nords had feared to even study. Ankano's attempt to channel the Eye's power created exactly the catastrophe the Psijics had warned against. The artifact released waves of destabilizing magical energy that created a barrier around the entire college, cutting it off from the rest of the world. Magic anomalies, creatures of pure magical force, began manifesting throughout the grounds. The very fabric of reality around the college started to fray as the Eye's power spiraled out of control, no longer constrained by the wards and protections that had kept it dormant for millennia. Ankano himself was transformed by the connection to the Eye, rendered temporarily invincible as he drew upon its limitless power. He was no longer simply a Thalmor agent, but had become something else, a conduit for forces he could not possibly understand or control. Every moment he maintained the connection, the danger grew worse, until it became clear that the Eye's instability would soon spread beyond the college, consuming Winterhold, spreading across Skyrim, and potentially threatening all of Tamriel. The Staff of Magnus, an artifact that had been wielded by the god of magic himself in ancient times, proved to be the key to severing Ankano's connection to the Eye. By using the staff to drain the Eye's energy, by temporarily closing the artifact and disrupting the flow of power to Ankano, the new Archmage was able to make the Thalmor advisor vulnerable to conventional attack. The battle was fierce, with Ankano repeatedly attempting to reconnect with the Eye and regain his invincibility. But ultimately, he was defeated and killed. But with Ankano's death, a new problem emerged. The Eye of Magnus was now critically unstable. The Thalmor agent's meddling had left it in a state of flux, its power no longer safely contained, threatening to release energies that could destroy the college and everything around it. The college's mages, skilled though they were, had no idea how to restore stability to an artifact whose very nature was beyond their comprehension. Quaranir appeared one final time, accompanied by fellow Psijics Gelebros and Tandil to resolve the crisis. His explanation was simple and chilling. The Eye has grown unstable. It cannot remain here, or else it may destroy your college and this world. It must be secured. Ankano's actions prove that the world is not ready for such a thing. The three Psijics performed a binding ritual, and the Eye of Magnus simply vanished from the Hall of the Elements. Where they took it, how they secured it, what safeguards they implemented, all of this remains unknown. The artifact was removed to wherever Artaeum exists in its hidden state, sealed away by magical means that the Psijics had perfected over millennia of safeguarding dangerous items and forbidden knowledge. Before departing, Quaranir named the hero who had defeated Ankano as the new Archmage of the College of Winterhold, acknowledging their role in preventing catastrophe while also placing upon them the burden of leadership and the responsibility to ensure such dangers were never unleashed again. The Eye of Magnus incident raises profound questions about the nature of the Psijic Order's watchfulness. How did they know about the Eye's discovery so quickly? Had they been monitoring Sarthal, waiting for someone to inevitably unearth it? Did they have methods of detection that could sense when artifacts of such power were disturbed? And most troublingly, how many other such artifacts exist in Tamriel, quietly watched over by the Psijics, waiting to be discovered by those who lack the wisdom to leave them alone? The incident also highlighted the ongoing rivalry between the Psijic Order and the Thalmor. Ancano explicitly referred to the Psijics as a rogue organization that viewed themselves as above the law, suggesting deep-seated animosity between these two powerful groups. The Thalmor, who control the Aldmeri Dominion and seek to reshape Tamriel according to their vision of Aldmeri supremacy, cannot tolerate the existence of an organization they cannot control, one that possesses power and knowledge beyond even their own considerable capabilities. The Psijics, meanwhile, view the Thalmor as dangerous zealots whose actions threaten the very stability the Order works to maintain. The Eye of Magnus served as a reminder that some knowledge is too dangerous to be accessible, that some powers should remain sealed away, no matter how much scholars might wish to study them. It vindicated the Psijic philosophy of careful stewardship, of recognizing that understanding sometimes requires accepting that certain questions should not be answered, certain boxes should never be opened, and somewhere, in a place beyond the reach of Daedric princes and mortal mages alike, the Eye of Magnus remains, watched over by the only organization in Tamriel with the power, knowledge, and wisdom to ensure it never again threatens the world. Chapter 9. Crisis on Somerset, the Second Era's Darkest Hour. The year 2E 582 marked one of the most dangerous periods in Tamriel's history, a time when the boundaries between Nirn and Oblivion had been weakened by Molag Bal's Plenameld, when dark cults worshipped Daedric princes openly, and when ancient threats thought long defeated began to stir once more. It was during this tumultuous period that the Psijic Order faced perhaps its greatest challenge, a conspiracy involving 3 Daedric princes, the Sea Slode of Ulvor Kus, and a plan to literally rewrite reality itself using the heart of transparent law, the stone of the Crystal Tower. The crisis began with a warning from an unexpected source. Sotha Sil, the clockwork god, reached out to the Psijic Order after an attack on his clockwork city. He had discovered evidence of a Daedric threat aimed at Somerset and Artaeum itself, and he understood that this was not a danger the Psijics could ignore. Writer Master Iacasis, who had led the Order for over 3,000 years, dispatched Valsaren to investigate, beginning a chain of events that would ultimately lead to his death and nearly result in the destruction of everything. The investigation began in the city-state of Shimmerine, where newcomers to Somerset were mysteriously disappearing. What Valsaren and her allies uncovered was deeply disturbing. A group called the Court of Bedlam, worshippers of Nocturnal, Mephala, and Clavicus Vile, were murdering these newcomers and using their deaths to power strange objects called abyssal pearls. These pearls, it turned out, were creations of the sea slode, slug-like aquatic beings whose mastery of life-draining magic had made them legendary threats. One such pearl was recovered and brought back to Artaeum for study, where it was placed in a scrying pool within Sapora Tower for examination. But this proved to be a catastrophic mistake. The pearl was not simply an artifact to be studied, it was a beacon, a doorway, a vulnerability that could be exploited by those who created it. Through the pearl, Keturah, an ancient sea slode and member of the Abyssal Cabal, launched an invasion of Artaeum itself. The Yagra came first, horrible crustacean-like Daedra from the Sea of Pearls, bursting forth from a portal near the beach and swarming toward the College of Psijic's ruins, where the Order stored its most dangerous relics and artifacts. The very idea that Artaeum could be invaded was shocking in itself. The island was supposed to be beyond reach, protected by wards and dimensional barriers that should have made such an assault impossible. But the Abyssal Pearls possessed power that could pierce even Psijic defenses, exploiting weaknesses in the wards that the Order had never imagined could exist. Iakisis led the defense personally, working alongside the Vestige, a mysterious hero who had become central to events throughout Tamriel, to destroy the Pearl and close the Yagra's portal. The invasion was repelled, but something was deeply wrong. Iakisis confessed to having vague memories that seemed to belong to someone else. Memories of moving the Pearl himself, of defeating Keturah in the past. His mind had been tampered with, and he didn't know how or why. The truth, when it emerged, was far worse than anyone had imagined. Over 350 years earlier, around 2E 230, three Daedric princes, Clavicus Vile, Mephala, and Nocturnal, had formed an alliance they called the Triad. Their goal was to acquire the heart of transparent law, the metaphysical stone at the core of the Crystal Tower, one of the fundamental structures that helped anchor reality itself. With the heart in their possession, they could gain control of the Crystal Tower and use its reality warping power to spread their influence across every possible timeline, every potential reality, remaking all of existence according to their will. To acquire the heart, the Triad made a deal with Keturah of the Abyssal Cabal. The Sea Slode would use his powerful mind magic to control Iakisis himself, forcing the Writer Master to steal the heart and hide it away until the Triad was ready to claim it. Keturah succeeded in overpowering Iakisis' mind, one of the most powerful mental faculties in Tamriel, demonstrating capabilities that even the Psijics had not anticipated. But Iakisis, even under mind control, fought back in the only way he could. He made a desperate bargain with Nocturnal herself, learning a spell that would hide the heart using a passphrase in a language only mortals could speak, ensuring that even he would be unable to find it without that specific trigger. Unbeknownst to all involved, Iakisis hid the heart within himself, transforming his own body into a living vault for one of the most powerful artifacts in existence. The spell Nocturnal taught him then made him forget the entire event, wiping away all memory of what he had done. With the last remnants of his free will, Iakisis managed to shift Artaeum into its pocket realm, removing the island from Neon and thus breaking Keturah's control. The The timing aligns closely with when Vanus Galerian left to found the Mages Guild around 2E 230, suggesting a period of profound crisis for the Order. But the damage had been done. His memories remained altered, false recollections implanted by the Sea Slode's mind magic, and the heart of transparent law was hidden so completely that even its protector did not know where it was. For 350 years, the Triad waited, planning, gathering power, and preparing for the moment when they could finally execute their scheme. The Court of Bedlam was formed as their mortal agents, worshippers who would do the prince's work on Nirn. The Abyssal Cabal continued its dark experiments with the pearls, refining their power until they could pierce even the dimensional barriers protecting Artaeum. And all the while, the Psijic Order remained ignorant of the threat, believing they had successfully hidden from danger by removing their island from the world. In 2E 582, when the Triad finally moved to execute their plan, events cascaded with terrifying speed. The Court of Bedlam worked to destabilize Somerset while searching for Artaeum. The Abyssal Cabal used their pearls to locate and invade the hidden island. Keturah returned to finish what he had started centuries before, attempting to force Iachesis to reveal the heart's location through a combination of mind magic and torture. Valsaren and the Vestige managed to break Keturah's hold on Iachesis, destroying the Sea Slode and freeing the Writer Master. But by accessing Keturah's memories, they learned the horrible truth. The heart was inside Iachesis himself, hidden where no one would ever think to look, protected by a spell that even he could not break without the proper passphrase, a passphrase only Nocturnal knew. The group journeyed to Evergloam, Nocturnal's realm within oblivion, attempting to learn the location of the heart before the Triad could. It was there that the full depth of Nocturnal's betrayal became apparent. When they reached the ritual site and discovered that the heart was within Iachesis, both Mephala and Clavicus Vile appeared, ready to claim their prize. But Nocturnal had never intended to share power with her fellow princes. She appeared at the critical moment and banished Mephala and Vile from her realm, revealing that she had been manipulating events all along to claim the Crystal Tower for herself. And then, with casual cruelty, she tore the heart of transparent law from Iachesis' body. The Writer Master, who had led the Psijic Order for over 3,000 years, who had weathered the rise and fall of civilizations, who had taught generations of students and preserved wisdom beyond measure, died in Evergloam. His last act was to choose his successor, naming Valsaren as the new Writer Master with his dying breath. With the heart in her possession, Nocturnal moved to claim the Crystal Tower. She knew that Mephala and Clavicus Vile would work against her, but she also knew that her power, combined with the heart's reality warping capabilities, would be sufficient to overcome any opposition. She was wrong. The Vestige, aided by Valsaren and the grudging cooperation of Mephala and Vile, managed to enter the Crystal Tower and disrupt Nocturnal's ritual before it could be completed. The battle within the Crystal Tower was fought on multiple levels simultaneously. Physical combat against Nocturnal's forces, magical struggle for control of the heart, and metaphysical warfare as reality itself became the battlefield. Darien Gautier, Meridia's champion, sacrificed himself to contain Nocturnal's essence, preventing the prince from completing her takeover. Lathan, Valseren's husband, who had been corrupted by the court of Bedlam years before, gave his life to ensure the heart could be restored to its proper place. When the crisis finally ended and Nocturnal's plot was foiled, the cost had been enormous. Iakesis was dead, the longest-serving leader the Psijic Order had ever known. Darien Gautier was lost, trapped in some realm between Nirn and Oblivion. Lathan was gone, dying as himself after years of corruption. The Crystal Tower had been scarred by the conflict, its defenses weakened, its sanctity violated. But the Triad's plot had failed. The heart of transparent law remained where it belonged. Reality continued to exist in its proper form, and the Crystal Tower stood intact. Valseren, despite her grief at losing both her teacher and her husband in the span of days, accepted the burden of leadership, becoming the temporary Writer-Master of the Psijic Order. She had proven herself worthy, not just through her magical capabilities, but through her courage, her wisdom, and her willingness to do whatever was necessary to protect not just Somerset or Tamriel, but all of existence itself. The crisis demonstrated several crucial truths about the Psijic Order. First, even they could be vulnerable. Their defenses penetrated, their leaders manipulated. 350 years of isolation had not prevented the Triad from targeting them. If anything, it had made them complacent about threats they believed they had escaped. Second, the Order's philosophy of minimal intervention had limits. When reality itself was at stake, there could be no passive observation, only active defense. And third, the Order's strength lay not just in its accumulated power and knowledge, but in individuals like Valseren and Iakesis, who embodied its ideals even in the face of impossible odds. The Somerset crisis marked a turning point for the Psijic Order. They could no longer remain completely isolated, could no longer pretend that hiding in a pocket realm would protect them from all threats. The world had changed, dangers had evolved, and the Order would need to adapt if it was to continue fulfilling its ancient purpose of safeguarding the fundamental forces of reality. Chapter 10. Relationships and Rivalries. The Psijic Order in Tamrielic Politics. For an organization that prides itself on remaining above worldly concerns, the Psijic Order has accumulated a remarkable number of complex relationships with other powers throughout Tamriel. These relationships reveal much about how the Order functions, what it values, and where it draws its lines regarding intervention in mortal affairs. The relationship between the Psijic Order and the Mages Guild is perhaps the most fascinating and contradictory. Vanus Galerian founded the guild explicitly because he disagreed with the Psijic's approach to knowledge, because he believed magic should be shared rather than hoarded. Yet the two organizations have maintained a complicated respect for each other across the centuries. The Psijics recognized that the Mages Guild served a purpose they could not. By making magic accessible, Galerian's organization prevented the kind of mystification and fear that had led to witch hunts and persecution of mages in darker times. For its part, the Mages Guild acknowledged that the Psijics possessed knowledge and capabilities beyond anything the guild could offer. When crises arose that required understanding of fundamental magical principles, when artifacts of immense power needed to be contained, when reality itself was at risk. It was to the Psijic Order that even archmages looked for guidance. The relationship was never warm, but it was functional, characterized by mutual recognition that each served a role the other could not fill. The Thalmor represent the opposite extreme, a relationship built on mistrust, ideological opposition, and barely concealed hostility. The Old Mary Dominion, particularly during the Fourth Era, seeks to reshape Tamriel according to a vision of Altmeri supremacy and religious orthodoxy. The very existence of the Psijic Order, with its different approach to ancestor worship, its refusal to elevate certain spirits above others, and its possession of power the Thalmor cannot control, represents a threat to that vision. Ancano's presence at the College of Winterhold as an advisor was not friendly cooperation, but surveillance and attempted infiltration. His actions with the Eye of Magnus represented the Thalmor's belief that they, not the Psijics, should be the arbiters of magical power in Tamriel. The Order's intervention to remove the Eye was both a necessity and a deliberate rebuke to Thalmor authority, a statement that some powers transcend political claims and can only be wielded by those with the wisdom to use them properly, or the wisdom to leave them alone. The Thalmor's view of the Psijics as a rogue organization that considers itself above the law is revealing. From the Thalmor perspective, all power in Altmeri society should flow through proper channels, should be subject to oversight by the Dominion's leadership. The Psijics' independence, their refusal to submit to external authority, their ability to simply vanish when confronted, all of this is intolerable to an organization obsessed with control and order. The rivalry is fundamental and unlikely to be resolved peacefully. The Order's relationship with political rulers throughout history has been characterized by cautious distance. In the early days, Psijics served as advisors to the kings of Somerset, offering counsel on matters both mundane and arcane. But these advisory relationships were always carefully limited. The Psijics would provide wisdom, but never power. They would suggest courses of action, but never demand obedience. And they maintained the right to withdraw entirely if their counsel was consistently ignored or misused. This approach led to mixed reactions from rulers. Some, secure in their own authority and genuinely seeking wisdom, welcomed Psijic advisors and treated them with the respect their knowledge deserved. Others, suspicious of power they could not control, or resentful of suggestions that implied their own judgment was insufficient, viewed the Psijics with distrust. Several kingdoms throughout history forbade the Psijic Order from operating within their borders, though enforcement of such prohibitions was practically impossible given the Order's capabilities. The famous meeting between Writermaster Iachesis and Queen Potema in 3E 110, prior to the War of the Isle, illustrates the complex nature of these political relationships. Potema had been entertaining representatives from Piandania, the kingdom of the Maorma Sea Elves who had long sought to conquer Somerset. When she questioned whether Iachesis found this confusing, given that the Maorma meant to invade Tamriel, his response was telling. Such matters did not concern the Psijic Order, for they had existed before the Septim Empire and would exist long after it had fallen. This statement encapsulates the Order's approach to political power. They acknowledge its existence. They may even work with it when necessary, but they do not defer to it. Empires rise and fall, dynasties come and go, but the Psijic Order endures, pursuing understanding that transcends the ephemeral concerns of mortal rulers. When the Order did ultimately help defend Somerset against the Maormer invasion, it was not out of loyalty to any political authority, but because allowing the invasion to succeed would have caused unnecessary suffering and disrupted the stability of the region. The relationship between the Psijics and various Daedric princes represents yet another dimension of the Order's complex web of connections. While the Psijics view Daedra as simply powerful spirits rather than true gods, they acknowledge the reality of Daedric power and the necessity of sometimes interacting with these entities. Sothasil used the Dreaming Cave to access Oblivion and negotiate the Cold Harbor Compact, an agreement that has protected Nirn from direct Daedric manifestation for centuries. This demonstrates the Order's willingness to facilitate necessary interactions with the princes, even though they do not worship or defer to them. The Triad's plot involving Nocturnal, Mephala, and Clavicus Vile revealed the dangers of such interactions. Even with all their power and wisdom, the Psijics could be manipulated by Daedric schemes operating on timescales measured in centuries. Aeacisus himself, the most powerful Psijic in history, was mind-controlled and used as an unwitting pawn. This serves as a reminder that for all their capabilities, the Order is not invincible, and Daedric princes represent threats that must be taken seriously. The Order's relationship with other magical organizations and secret societies remains largely obscure. References exist to connections with the Weird Covens, mystics who serve as the Order's eyes and ears through telepathic bonds. There are suggestions of past interactions with various other groups that have risen and fallen throughout Tamrielic history, but these connections remain deliberately vague, protected by the same secrecy that shields so much of the Order's activities. What emerges from examining these various relationships is a picture of an organization that engages with the world on its own terms, never fully integrating into Tamrielic society, but never completely separate from it either. The Psijic Order maintains independence not out of arrogance, but out of recognition that to fulfill their purpose of studying and safeguarding the fundamental forces of reality, they must remain free from entanglements that would compromise their neutrality or distort their judgment. This is both the Order's greatest strength and its most significant limitation. By remaining outside conventional power structures, they preserve the wisdom and capability to intervene when intervention is necessary. But this same distance means they sometimes miss developing threats, fail to recognize dangers until they have already metastasized, and struggle to work effectively with political and military forces when crises demand coordination rather than isolated action. The Psijic Order will never be fully integrated into Tamrielic society. They will never submit to external authority or compromise their independence, but they will continue to maintain these complex webs of relationships, carefully managing interactions with rulers, organizations, and powers throughout the world, always walking the fine line between isolation and intervention, between observation and action. Chapter 11. The Legacy of the Psijic Order, Shaping Tamriel's magical understanding. 3,000 years is a long time, even in a world where elves measure their lives in centuries and gods walk among mortals. Across that vast span, the Psijic Order has exerted an influence on Tamriel's magical development that is difficult to fully quantify, but impossible to ignore. They are, in very real ways, the foundation upon which all modern magical practice is built, even if that foundation is rarely acknowledged and poorly understood. The Order's most direct contribution to magical knowledge was their role in developing what would come to be known as mysticism. Long before there was a name for it, before it was codified as one of the 6 schools of magic recognized by the Mages Guild, the Psijics were exploring the principles that would define this school: the manipulation of souls, the detection and dispelling of magic, the ability to perceive that which is hidden, and the fundamental connection between the mage and the forces of nature. When other mages eventually began studying these phenomena, they were building, often unknowingly, on groundwork laid by Psijic research centuries earlier. The relationship between the Psijic concept of the old ways and what other mages call mysticism is complex and somewhat murky. The Psijics themselves have stated that these terms refer to the same basic practice, but they also acknowledge what they call a semantic quagmire. The old ways also refers to their religion, their philosophy, and their entire approach to understanding reality, which may or may not all be considered part of mysticism proper. This ambiguity is typical of Psijic teaching, which often operates on multiple levels simultaneously and resists simple categorization. Another significant contribution, though one whose specifics remain obscure, is something called the cloven duality. References to this concept appear in various texts, always attributed to Psijic development, but its exact nature has never been fully explained to outsiders. Scholars speculate it might relate to the Order's understanding of Anu and Padome, the primordial forces of stasis and change, or perhaps to the relationship between the spiritual and material worlds. Whatever the cloven duality truly represents, it is considered important enough to be mentioned alongside the Order's other major contributions to magical theory. The Psijic compensation represents the Order's attempt to explain Aldmeri religious beliefs to outsiders, specifically to Emperor Uriel V. This document offers a mostly accurate summation of what the Psijics call the Elder Way, their approach to understanding cosmology and metaphysics. Interestingly, the compensation carefully avoids placing explicit blame on the Lorcan concept, recognizing that while many Altmer view Lorcan as a trickster who doomed the Aedra, the Imperials revere his parallel aspect, Shazar, as a heroic figure. This diplomatic approach demonstrates the Order's ability to communicate complex philosophical and theological concepts across cultural boundaries, translating ideas in ways that different audiences can understand without compromising essential truths. Beyond these specific documented contributions, the Psijic Order has influenced magical practice throughout Tamriel in subtler but no less significant ways. Many of the principles that modern mages take for granted, the understanding that magic involves binding natural forces to individual will, the recognition that magical effects can be achieved through multiple different methods and mechanisms, the acknowledgement that soul magic requires ethical boundaries. All of these concepts can be traced back, at least in part, to Psijic philosophy that slowly permeated through Tamrielic magical culture. The very existence of the Mages Guild, with all its contributions to democratizing magic and spreading knowledge, represents a form of Psijic legacy. Venus Galerian was shaped by his Psijic training, even as he rebelled against the Order's approach. His understanding of magic, his capabilities as a mage, his vision for what magical education could become, all of these were built on foundations laid during his years on Artaeum. In creating an alternative to the Psijic's exclusivity, Galerian paradoxically validated their original work, proving that the knowledge they had developed was valuable enough to be worth sharing more widely. Even negative legacies, like Mannimarco's Order of the Black Worm, trace back to Psijic influence. Mannimarco's understanding of soul magic and necromancy, while twisted to evil purposes, was initially developed through Psijic training. The fact that he was able to become the first Lich in history to develop black soul gems, to create necromantic techniques that would be practiced for centuries after his transformation. All of this demonstrates the depth and power of the knowledge the Psijics had accumulated. That this knowledge could be perverted so thoroughly is a warning about the dangers of power without wisdom, but it also testifies to the significance of what the Order had achieved. The legacy extends to how Tamriel understands time itself. Before Psijic demonstrations of temporal manipulation, during the Second Era's time breach crisis, most mages viewed time as fundamentally immutable, something that could be perceived differently through magic, but never actually altered. The Psijics proved this wrong, demonstrating that time could be frozen, rewound, and manipulated in ways that defied conventional understanding. While few mages outside the Order have mastered these techniques, the mere knowledge that such things are possible has expanded the boundaries of what magical scholars believe can be achieved. The Order's approach to magical ethics has also influenced broader magical culture. The distinction they draw between studying dangerous magic to understand and contain it versus embracing dark arts for personal power, their emphasis on the responsibility that comes with capability, their belief that some knowledge should be preserved but not widely shared. These concepts have shaped debates within magical communities for centuries. Even those who disagree with specific Psijic positions find themselves arguing within a framework the Order helped establish. Perhaps most significantly, the Psijic Order represents living proof that certain approaches to understanding reality are possible. They demonstrate that mages can live for thousands of years through life extension magic. They prove that entire islands can be shifted between planes. They show that time itself is not immutable. They establish that it is possible to study the fundamental forces of reality without being destroyed or driven mad in the process. Every one of these demonstrations expands what mages throughout Tamriel believe is achievable, raising the ceiling of possibility for all magical practice. The Order's influence on specific individuals who then shaped Tamrielic history cannot be overstated. Beyond Galerian and Mannimarco, the Psijics have trained or advised countless mages who went on to positions of influence. Some became court wizards to kings. Others established their own magical traditions. Still others contributed to the development of magical theory and practice in ways both large and small. The Order served as a training ground, a finishing school for the most talented mages in history, even when those mages ultimately chose to pursue different paths. There is also the negative space, the influence exerted by what the Psijics did not do. By hoarding knowledge, by maintaining such strict standards for membership, by remaining isolated for long periods, the Order created pressure for alternatives to develop. The Mages Guild would likely never have been founded if the Psijics had been more willing to share their knowledge. Various magical traditions throughout Tamriel developed in part because the Psijics were not available as teachers or advisors. In this sense, the Order's exclusivity shaped magical development as much as their direct contributions did. Looking forward, the legacy continues to evolve. Valserin's leadership in the Second Era, stepping into the role vacated by Ikisis's death, represents both continuity and change. The Order adapted to new threats, proved willing to be more directly involved in world affairs when necessary, while still maintaining their core identity and purpose. Whether this represents a permanent shift or merely a temporary adjustment to extraordinary circumstances remains to be seen. What is certain is that the Psijic Order will continue to influence Tamrielic magical understanding for as long as they exist. They are the keepers of secrets that predate civilization, the preservers of knowledge that might otherwise be lost, the practitioners of techniques that push the boundaries of what magic can achieve. Their legacy is written not just in what they have taught directly, but in the very framework through which Tamriel understands magic itself, a framework they helped create, shape, and defend across 3,000 years of history. Chapter 12. The Eternal Mystery. And so we return to where we began, standing at the edge of the world, gazing upon an island that exists beyond normal understanding, contemplating an organization that has shaped Tamrielic history while remaining fundamentally apart from it. The Psijic Order is many things. They are scholars who have spent millennia unraveling the fundamental forces that bind reality together. They are guardians who safeguard artifacts and knowledge too dangerous to be freely accessible. They are advisors who have guided kings and emperors while refusing to claim power for themselves. They are mystics who can manipulate time itself, shift entire islands between planes of existence, and rival gods in terms of raw magical capability. But perhaps most importantly, they are a reminder that wisdom is not the same as knowledge, that understanding is not the same as information, and that power means nothing without the discernment to use it properly. In an age when magic has become increasingly commodified, when spell casting services can be purchased in any major city, when enchanted items fill merchant stalls throughout Tamriel, the Psijic Order stands as a testament to an older approach, one that views magic not as a tool or commodity, but as a way of understanding the deepest truths of existence. They prove that some things cannot be bought or sold, cannot be rushed or simplified, cannot be reduced to formulas and techniques divorced from philosophy and wisdom. Their story is filled with contradictions. They claim to value knowledge above all else, yet they hoard that knowledge jealously. They preach non-intervention, yet they appear at critical moments to alter the course of history. They insist on neutrality, yet they have clear views on right and wrong, on good and bad change. They retreat from the world, yet they maintain agents and observers throughout Tamriel. They are Altmer, yet they rejected the very cultural changes that defined modern Altmer civilization. These contradictions are not flaws, but features, reflections of a philosophy sophisticated enough to recognize that simple answers are rarely true answers. That wisdom often lies in navigating between extremes rather than choosing one over the other. The Psijic Order occupies the liminal space between action and inaction, between sharing and hoarding, between engagement and isolation. And in that space, they have found a way to endure and evolve across millennia while maintaining their core purpose. The individuals who have worn the grey robes across the centuries, brilliant students like Galerion and Manimarco, divine figures like Sothasil, tragic heroes like Valsaren and Iakisis, each brought their own interpretation to what it means to be a Psijic. Some left to pursue different visions. Some fell into darkness. Some sacrificed everything to protect what the Order represented. And through all of it, the organization itself persisted, adapting to loss and change, while preserving the essential wisdom that justified its existence. As we move forward in Tamrielic history, into the uncertain future of the Fourth Era and beyond, questions remain. Where is Artaeum now, in its latest disappearance? What does the Order observe from its hidden sanctuary? What threats do they monitor? What artifacts do they safeguard? What crises do they prepare to prevent? Who leads them now, with Iakisis gone and Valsaren's status unclear? How has the Order adapted to a world where the Thalmor control Somerset, where the old dynasties have fallen, where new powers rise with ambitions the ancient Psijics might not fully understand? These questions may never be answered fully. The Psijic Order does not explain itself to outsiders. It does not justify its actions or defend its choices. It simply continues, decade after decade, century after century, pursuing understanding that most mortals cannot even imagine, safeguarding secrets that could reshape or destroy the world, walking the narrow path between wisdom and folly with the sure steps of those who have traveled it for 3,000 years. In a world of gods and demons, of magic and myth, of endless war and constant upheaval, the Psijic Order remains one of the greatest mysteries, not because we know nothing about them. Scholars have documented much of their history, their philosophy, their major interventions in world affairs. But because the more we learn, the more we realize how much remains hidden, how much we still fail to understand, how much deeper the mystery goes than we ever imagined. They are the old ways in a world rushing toward new futures. They are the keepers of knowledge in an age of information. They are the masters of time itself, watching the present while remembering a past most have forgotten and preparing for futures most cannot conceive. They are the Psijic Order, and as long as Tamriel endures, As long as reality itself holds together, they will continue their eternal vigil, studying, preserving, and protecting the fundamental forces that make existence possible. If you found value in this deep exploration of the Psijic Order's mysteries and history, please consider subscribing to the channel and hitting that like button. It helps others discover these comprehensive lore explorations and supports the creation of more content, diving into the deepest secrets of the Elder Scrolls universe. What aspect of the Psijic Order fascinates you most? Their mastery of time, their mysterious origins, the tragedy of Iachesis and Manamako? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, may your path be illuminated by wisdom, and may the 11 forces guide your steps through whatever darkness lies ahead. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the heart of Tamriel's greatest mystery.